Julietta Dexter, it's really lovely to chat to you today for She Can. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
It's very lovely to be with you today, Stephanie. Thank you very much for having me on She Can. My name is Julietta Dexter. I am the co-founder and Chief Growth and Purpose Officer of ScienceMagic.Inc. And prior to that, I was the Chief Executive of the Communications Store. And I'm also the chair of a nationwide UK charity called SmartWorks.
Julietta, I love your title. Explain to us a little bit what it is that you actually do.
Yes, well, a lot of people, Stephanie, think that growth and purpose are two things that are opposed and at counterbalance with one another. So when you think about growth in a business, my role is really growth to me in the most holistic way. So yes, of course, growth of new business, of driving revenue into a company, but also the growth of the organization, the growth of the people, the growth of the culture, the growth of what it means to be an organization that should be constantly being curious, challenging, contributing, growing, improving. And the purpose side of my title is really around culture, ethics, and values in business. We are a B Corp certified company. And that really means, in my view, thinking about the quadruple bottom line, not just profit, but people, social impact, planet, environmental impact, and also purpose. Why do we get up and do what we do every day? Is it purely to make money for oneself, or is there a greater value and meaning? And that's why, for me personally, I find the business community so stimulating and I'm still here. I hope you're there. Can you hear me?
Yes, sorry, you just cut out. Julietta, it's hugely inspiring. I think this is really the future, isn't it? And it's hugely inspiring to chat to you about exactly this today. Tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you get to this place?
Well, I think, Stephanie, the world is coming my way, which I feel hugely optimistic and excited about. My journey was that as a little girl, I was thinking about this interview this morning, and as a little girl, I'm the youngest of three sisters, and my father was a businessman. He worked in insurance, and I remember my father coming home from work every day and changing his clothes, getting into something comfortable, and then sitting in the sitting room reading his newspaper. And I just thought that looked so important. And I thought that, you know, my father ran a successful business of which I knew very little, of course, as a child. But I thought that a newspaper was the most wonderful thing because you could learn everything about business, about the world, about people, about education, about the weather, about sport. I thought it was just all so all-encompassing. And I always remember feeling very sort of curious about my father coming home from work and reading this important newspaper. And I used to try and read the newspaper. I grew up in Milan in Italy, so it was in Italian, and really thinking, I wonder if one day I could really understand what this newspaper actually says. So I think that as a child, there was always this kind of interest in my father's work. As the youngest of three daughters at that time in society, I think my father had probably hoped that I might be a boy third time round. And so I think that in my relationship with my father, I always tried a bit to be the boy that perhaps he wanted me to be. You know, if there was ever a car to drive or a boat to sail or a sport to do, or, you know, sort of be interested in his work, I tried to play that role, I think, for him, really. When I went to university, just before my finals at university, my father died very suddenly at the age of 58. And I think that like a lot of people actually who I've met through my life who are very committed or very driven or passionate about something, quite often there's trauma somewhere in their past. And so I think that at that moment in my life where, if you like, my working life was going to start, I was very taken with the fact that my father, I learned at his death, had been deeply loved by his employees. There was no Wolf of Wall Street anywhere around. And actually, he had thought very progressively, in my opinion, around how his work culture was operated. For example, all through the summer months, and we do this now in our company as well, the office closes at 2 o'clock on a Friday. So everybody can go and enjoy that summer sunshine. And if you have a dental appointment or a child's birthday party or sports day or whatever, you have the opportunity to plan yourself and do that. I think he had 8 people in his company that were, it's quite a small company, that were share option holders in the business. So again, sort of sharing the revenues as opposed to keeping it all for the boss. And so these things touched me a great deal. And I suppose I've tried to emulate that in my business life. So I went into the workplace and I did not find the cultures that I thought were the way of the world, and the way that you go to school, you go to university, you really, really, really work very hard to try and do the best that you can. And then you get into the workplace and there's all this politics and this, frankly, toxic culture that I found in a number of workplaces. So at the ripe old age of 24 or 25, I decided that I should maybe start a business. And the reason to start the business was really with one only idea. Could you run a business in the modern world and be successful, whatever success is to you? What success might look like to you, Stephanie, could be quite different than what it is to me, inside and outside of financial gain, and to be a decent human being at the same time? Or is that not possible? Do you have to be aggressive, focused only on the bottom line, etc.? And so that's really just been the expose of my life. I started the communication store in 1995. And more recently, last year, we have evolved the communication store into ScienceMagic.Inc. And I have partnered with David Pemsel, who was the chief executive of the Guardian newspaper. And so at the ripe old age of 51, I'm starting all over again.
I love that story, Julietta. It's so, so inspiring. Thank you for telling it. I would love to know what motivates you every morning to keep on your path of growing Science Inc. and continuing. What is out there for you to conquer?
I want to give your listeners some really useful answers, actually, rather than some sort of cheesy or trite ones. But I think it is true that if you love what you do, it gets you up and it motivates you to get out and do it in the morning. I have some pretty horrific days at work, I'm not going to lie, but the vast majority of the days that I have are days that I enjoy immensely and feel that I'm being challenged and that I'm learning and growing and evolving and hopefully also helping other people around me. So I think that that's the honest answer. I've just been desperately lucky to constantly evolve something that I love. I love the staff, I love my business partners, I love the clients. So that really is an enormous blessing. And I think that the sort of telltale sign here is that you do it and you're working, but it doesn't feel like work. You're doing something that you kind of don't have to try. It's like people say to me, oh gosh, poor you, it's always on because you own a business with your business partners. And it's like, yeah, but I don't struggle to think about it. I'm thinking about it all the time. I'm thinking about our teams all the time. It's not like, oh gosh, Stephanie, I've got to leave you because I've got to go and think about work. It's just, in me. It is me all the time. And I think that my second motivation is that I had children quite young. I had two little girls, Darcy and Valentina, who are now young women. And I was divorced quite young. I've been remarried for a very long time, but I was a single mum. And the survival instinct of looking after my girls and doing the best that I could for them, and giving them the best life that I could, and working and being independent to make a living, to give us the best life and, frankly, the best education that they could have. That was certainly very, very, very motivating. And now it's very exciting because they both work, and I find them immensely helpful because they know things that I don't know. So it's wonderful.
I know we really need the younger generations to keep us up to date with all the social media and yeah. Julietta, what is your superpower? What is it that makes you so successful? And no doubt you are very successful in what you're doing.
You know, Stephanie, I think about success a lot because I think we've stereotyped success, particularly in the West. And I think about that a great deal. And I think that success is really relative to who you are. I feel that, for example, I've had two healthy children so far. So I've had the absolute blessing of being able to go to work every day. Many women are not in that situation. So I don't really consider myself successful. I consider myself that I'm on a path of learning and constantly going somewhere. So I've never had the kind of I've arrived moment. And I will never, I know that. Because every day, particularly now with David by my side, I'm learning completely new skills, new things. So I think that curiosity is maybe one, that you want to keep learning. I think that arrogance is a very, very dangerous thing. You're only as good as your last day at work. And so for me, humility, of feeling very, very grateful for the loyalty of staff, for the loyalty of clients, for the ability to go to work every day and be healthy, particularly in this period of pandemic. So I think humility is something that's extremely important. That doesn't mean weakness. Many people in the business community think that humility is weakness. I don't see that at all. And I think that people say about me that I feel empathy and compassion to other human beings a great deal. And I think that's really important. There's no point being a boss that thinks there's one set of rules for the boss and another for the more junior members of staff. As you said earlier about my daughters, they have superpowers that I don't have. So the discrimination in the workplace in an era of inclusivity and diversity, for me, is to do with skin color, of course, sexuality, gender. Yes, 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 but more also. Where do you sit in an organization, and are you perceived or discriminated against because you're just the intern or just the receptionist? And this I abhor. I can't bear it. Before I go home in the evening, I always talk to our cleaning staff who are a contracted supplier to ask them how they are. I mean, they have to come in here every day and clean up after our mess. I mean, how nice is that? And when we return to the office in the morning, how it looks and feels is vital to our ability to perform as an organization. So to me, inclusivity and diversity means exactly that, treating everybody in the same way. So I feel that a great deal. And then I suppose finally, hard work. It's all very well setting up a company, that's one thing, but then taking it forward for 27 years is quite another. So you've got to really want it. You've got to really make those choices. And, you've got to really decide that that's what you want to be doing with your life.
I mean, I almost have tears in my eyes, Julietta, because I absolutely love everything you say, and I find it deeply inspiring. And I'm wondering, do you think that is more of a female power to have this type of this leadership style where you really extend it to everyone?
Well, it's a really interesting question, Stephanie. And again, as I said earlier, I'm on the beginning of a new learning curve because I have partnered with David. And so I've always had business partners, very, very successfully with a huge amount of love. But perhaps this is the first time where what I suppose in the world of inclusivity and diversity is a bit of a difficulty, a middle-aged white man has become my business partner. And I think a lot about my role as a female in the workplace. And a lot of the time in the past, I've grown a company that was largely female. At one point, we were 88% female. And back then, when I was a young woman, that was enough in terms of inclusivity and diversity. The fact that the organization, at one point, I think we were 200 members of staff, and all of us were really, a lot of women together. And I thought that was great. Although I felt very strongly that to have a mix, a dynamic blend of different people together was really where we needed to go. And so I don't want to discriminate against anybody in the workplace. And my fundamental belief is that men and women must stand together, shoulder to shoulder, with mutual respect in the workplace. And this is what I'm learning at the moment with David. David has superpowers that I don't have, and vice versa. And I find it immensely inspiring that David says to me, I'm learning from you, Julietta, and vice versa. And so a little bit, when I partnered with David, there were some women in my world that said, why did you do that? You were the female entrepreneur founder, it was all about you. And my answer is, I've had that journey. It's never going to go away. I will always be very proud of what I've achieved, and I hope how I may have inspired others. I also believe, Stephanie, that as women in the workplace, it is our privilege and duty and our right to stand shoulder to shoulder with, male business leaders. And that's the next part of my journey.
Amazing, Julietta. Thank you for sharing that. Give us some top tips for other women.
Sleep. You got to sleep. You've absolutely got to sleep. If you don't sleep, you lose your mind. So that's super important. One of my things is that I never bother about what lunch is going to be. I eat the same thing in the office at lunch every day. I can't bear people sort of saying, what would you like for lunch today? We're busy, right? Like, we'll have a wonderful meal in the evening, but in the daytime, for me, I think Barack Obama said that you can only really make 17 good decisions a day, and I'm making decisions all the time. So lunch is not going to be one of them for sure. And I think that one of the things that I look back at is just don't take yourself too seriously. You have to try so hard as a woman, you really do. But make sure that you've got good friends around you. Listen to voices, but make your own decisions. And I think that finally, a tip would be that imposter syndrome is very, very real. And I've made the mistake many times because I was the youngest of 3 girls, maybe, I don't know, in my family dynamic, but thinking that other people knew, always thinking that I wouldn't know and that somebody else would have the answer. And I've learned the hard way that actually there's 2 things. There's your head and then there's your heart. And I call it the knowing. Like, if you really ask yourself the question, you know the answer, and trust yourself to know the answer.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. That's I completely, I'm so with you. Julietta, last question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Or what are your dreams to where you want to be in 5 years' time?
Well, as I said to you, Stephanie, I sort of feel that I'm on the beginning of a new journey of ScienceMagic.Inc. I wrote a book that was published last year called Good Company, How to Build a Business Without Losing Your Values. And I sort of saw that as the sort of closure of one chapter. So I feel very much that I'm at the beginning of a new chapter. We are exploring all sorts of things at ScienceMagic. So data-driven science, AI-driven science. We're exploring the crypto world, the metaverse, non-fungible, fungible tokens. So I'm very curious about the science of our world of digitalized technology, machine learning, etc. So I'm excited about that. And at the same time, the magic of humanity, of creative imagination, of humanity, of empathy, compassion, storytelling is just as important. And I'm sure you know Gillian Tett, who's also just written a book, journalist at the FT. She was actually an anthropologist as a student. And she also talks so much about business organizations having this, yes, we've got to look at the data sets, yes, we've got to look at the numbers, but never forget the importance of the irrationality, actually, of the emotion of humanity. And so I'm very, very excited about building ScienceMagic.Inc. with my business partners and a world-class team around us. So that's definitely one thing. So in 5 years, I hope I'm doing this and that we've been successful at building this company together, which I'm sure we will do our very best at. There's no sort of sailing off into the distance for me, I have to say. My charity work is very important to me. And SmartWorks does the most amazing job of dressing women and coaching women for interview. So women who've lost their confidence through whatever eventualities in life, and SmartWorks dresses them and gives them interview coaching. And they have about a 65% success rate of getting women back into the workplace. So I'm very excited about that role. And I think that finally, Stephanie, there's an enormous discrimination against older women in the workplace. I think my husband would probably rather that I stay a little bit in the office all the time. I think he's a bit worried about what happened at home if I suddenly said, right, that's it, I'm going to be at home now. So I think he's very encouraging of my work. And I think that I would love, if I'm able to be an inspiration to show women of all ages that at 60, 70, 80, even 90 years old, you have got an enormous amount of wisdom to bring to any workplace. And I love the fact that your platform is called She Can, because the final words in my book are you can, you can, you can, if you want to.
I did read that. Thank you. Julietta, thank you for being such an inspiration in the for-profit and non-for-profit arena. It was great talking to you.
It's a privilege to talk to you this morning, Stephanie. Thank you so much.